Crypto-Judaism is the secret adherence to Judaism while publicly professing to be of another faith. Practitioners are referred to as crypto-Jews. The term crypto-Jew is also used to describe descendants of Jews who maintain some Jewish traditions of their ancestors while publicly adhering to other faiths. The term is especially applied historically to European Jews who outwardly or forcedly professed Catholicism, who were also known as Anusim or Marrano. The phenomenon is especially associated with Renaissance Spain, following the June 6, 1391, anti-Jewish pogroms and the expulsion of the Jews in 1492 unless they converted. Later, under its blood purity laws, Spain restricted explorers and settlers in the New World to Old Christians of 3 generations or more. Europe. Officially, Jews who converted in Spain in the 14th and 15th centuries were known as Cristianos Nuevos, but were commonly called conversos. Spain and Portugal passed legislation restricting the rights in the mother countries and colonies. Only Christians were allowed to go to the New World. Despite the dangers of the Inquisition, many conversos continued to secretly and discreetly practice Jewish rituals. After the Alhambra decree of 1492, numerous conversos, also called Zueta, in the Balearic Islands ruled by Spain, publicly professed Roman Catholicism but privately adhered to Judaism, even through the Spanish Inquisition. They are among the most widely known and documented crypto-Jews. In Greece, Romani Jews have been present for a little more than 2,000 years. Greek Jews played an important role in the early development of Christianity, and became a source of education and commerce for the Byzantine Empire and throughout the period of Ottoman Greece. During World War II, the community suffered devastation in the Holocaust after Greece was conquered and occupied by the Axis powers, in spite of efforts by Greeks to protect them. In the aftermath of the war, a large percentage of the surviving community emigrated to Israel of the United States. Greek Jews today largely live side by side in harmony with Christian Greeks, according to Giorgio Romeo of the Jewish Museum of Greece. They continue to work with other Greeks and Jews worldwide to combat the anti-Semitism in Greece. Crypto-Judaism existed also in earlier periods, whenever Jews were forced or pressured to convert to the majority religion by the rulers of places where they resided. Some of the Jewish followers of Sabbatai Zevi formally converted to Islam. Later followers of Jacob Frank formally converted to Christianity, but maintained aspects of practice of the versions of Messianic Judaism. Crypto-Jews persisted in Russia and Eastern European countries influenced by the Soviet Union after the rise of communism with the Russian Revolution of 1917. The government, which included secular communist Jews, did not force Jews to convert to the Russian Orthodox Church, but regarded practice of any religion as undesirable. Some faiths were allowed to continue under strict supervision by the regime. Since the end of communism, many people in former Soviet states, including descendants of Jews, have publicly taken up the faith of their ancestors again. The Belmont Jews of Portugal, dating from the 12th century, maintained strong secret traditions for centuries. A whole community survived in secrecy by maintaining a tradition of endogamous marriage and hiding all external signs of the faith. They and the practices were discovered only in the 20th century. The rich Sephardic tradition of Crypto-Judaism is unique. Some now profess Orthodox Judaism, although many still retain the centuries-old traditions. Role of Maimonides. As one of the towering figures in Judaism and a publisher of the Mishnah Torah expansion of the Talmud, Maimonides also issued a landmark doctrinal response to the forced conversions of Jews in the Iberian Peninsula by the zealous Almohads. In his epistle on martyrdom, however, Maimonides suggested that the persecuted Jew should publicly adopt Islam while maintaining Crypto-Judaism and not seek martyrdom unless forced to transgress Jewish commandments in public. He also excoriated one writer who advocated martyrdom for long-winded foolish babbling and nonsense and for misleading and hurting the Jews. In a sweeping view of the Jewish past, Maimonides marshals examples of heretics and sinners from the Bible to show that even oppressors of Israel were rewarded by God for a single act of piety or respect. How much greater then, he argues, will be the reward of the Jews who, despite the exigencies of forced conversion, perform commandments secretly. Maimonides championed rationalism over the then accepted practice of martyrdom when facing religious adversity. This consequently legitimized Crypto-Judaism by the religion's standards, and provided doctrinal backing for Jews during the centuries of the Spanish Inquisition. Before the Spanish Inquisition, according to the Jewish Virtual Library, several incidents of forced conversions happened prior to 1492 and outside of Iberia. One of the earliest conversions happened a century after the fall of Rome and was in Clermont-Ferrand, after a member of the Jewish community in Clermont-Ferrand became a Jewish Christian and was persecuted by other members of the community for doing so. The cavalcade in which he was marching persecuted his persecutors in turn. The participants in the procession then made an attack which destroyed completely, razing it to the grounds. Subsequently, Bishop Avatus directed a letter to the Jews in which he disclaimed the use of compulsion to make them adopt Christianity, but announced at the end of the missive, "Therefore if ye be ready to believe as I do, be one flock with us, and I shall be your pastor, but if ye be not ready, depart from this place." The community hesitated for 3 days before making a decision. Finally the majority, some 500, accepted Christianity. The Christians in Clermont greeted the event with rejoicing. Candles were lit, the lamps shone, the whole city radiated with the light of the snow-white flock. The Jews who preferred exile left for Marseille. The poet Venantius Fortunatus composed a poem to commemorate the occasion. In 582 the Frankish king Chilperic compelled numerous Jews to adopt Christianity. Again the Anusim were not wholehearted in their conversion, for some of them, cleansed in body but not in heart, denied God, and returned to their ancient perfidy, so that they were seen keeping the Sabbath as well as Sunday. The Clermont-Ferrand conversions preceded the first forced conversions in Iberia by 40 years. Forced baptisms of Jews took place in Iberia in 616 at the insistence of Visigoth monarch Isibit. Persistent attempts to enforce conversion were made in the 7th century by the Visigoths in Spain after they had adopted the Roman Catholic faith. Comparatively mild legal measures were followed by the harsh edict issued by King Sisibit in 616, ordering the compulsory baptism of all Jews. After conversion, however, the Anusim evidently maintained the Jewish cohesion and religious life. It was undoubtedly this problem that continued to occupy Spanish sovereigns at the successive councils of Toledo, representing both the ecclesiastical and secular authorities. Thus, steps were taken to secure that the children of converts had a Christian religious education, as well as to prevent the older generation from continuing to observe the Jewish rites or from failing to observe the Catholic ones. A system of strict supervision by the clergy over the way of life and movements of the Anusim was imposed. In the 12th century, Muslim extremists known as the Almohads forced conversions of Jews to Islam in their conquest of Al-Andalus, a Muslim-ruled territory in the Iberian Peninsula. In the 13th century, forced conversions took place in Italy, spreading as far as Apulia, where the Anusim assimilated to the point of not being recognized as Jewish. A later observer wrote, "Our forefathers were Jews who adopted Christianity 150 years ago, rather from compulsion than of their own free will." The Zueta are a minority on the Balearic island of Majorca. They are descended almost entirely from crypto-Jews forced to convert in 1391. The term Zueta literally translates to pig in Catalan, similar to the Old Spanish term Marrano, both have the same meaning. Today, they comprise a population of 20,000–25,000 on an island of 750,000. They have adhered to Roman Catholicism for centuries but have only recently seen a lessening in tensions with ethnic Majorcans. According to some Orthodox rabbis, the majority of Zuites are probably Jewish under Jewish law due to the low rate of intermarriage by these people with outside groups. Only recently have intermarriages between the two groups been more prevalent and noticeable. Since the late 20th century, several Zuites are reported to have reconverted to Judaism. Some have become rabbis. Neophytes. The Neophytes were a group of crypto-Jews living in the Kingdom of Sicily, which included all of southern Italy from the 13th to the 16th centuries, Mediterranean and Asia. There have been several communities of crypto-Jews in Muslim lands. The ancestors of the Daguestans in Morocco are thought to have kept up the Jewish practices a long time after the nominal adoption of Islam. In Iran, a large community of crypto-Jews lived in Mashhad near Khorasan, where they were known as Jadid al-Islam. They were mass converted to Islam around 1839 after the Almohads events. Most of this community left for Israel in 1946. Some converted to Islam and remained in Iran. In one central Iranian village, local Muslims practice many Jewish customs, such as women lighting a candle on Friday night. Before sundown on Friday, they prepare a small fire which they leave on throughout Saturday, so as not to ignite the fire on the Sabbath. India. In 1494, after the signing of the Treaty of Tordesillas authorized by Pope Alexander VI, Portugal was given the right to found colonies in the Eastern Hemisphere. In the East, according to Walter Fischel, the Portuguese found use for the crypto-Jews in Goa and their other Indian and Asian possessions. Jews were used as letter carriers, translators, agents, etc. The ability of the Sephardic Jews and Anusim to speak Arabic made them vital to Portuguese colonial ambitions in the East, where they could go on diplomatic and trade missions in the courts of the Mughal Empire and elsewhere. India also attracted Sephardic Jews and Anusim for other reasons. In his lecture at the Library of Congress, Sanjay Subramaniam said that crypto-Jews were especially attracted to India because not only was it a center of trade in goods such as spices and diamonds, but India also had established an ancient Jewish settlements along its western coast. Although Jews were able to openly worship in southern and eastern India with the Bene Israel, Malabar, Kochi, and Baghdadi Jewish communities, they experienced severe violence and persecution from the Muslim influence in northwest Punjabi India. The presence of these older communities offered the Anusim, who had been forced to accept Catholicism, the chance to live within the Portuguese Empire, away from the Inquisition, and, if they wished, they were able to contact the Jews in these communities and re-adopt the faith of the fathers. The presence of crypto-Jews in India aroused the anger of the Archbishop of Goa, Dom Gaspar, George de Leo Pereira and others, who wrote polemics and letters to Lisbon urging that the Inquisition be brought to India. 24 years after Portuguese Inquisition began, the Goan Inquisition came to India in 1560 after Francis Xavier, who was made a saint by the Catholic Church, placed a request for it to the King of Portugal. The Inquisition in all the Portuguese territories put roughly 45,000 people on trial, with the most active court being in Goa. The Goan Inquisition initially targeted Anusim and Jews, but like the Inquisitions in Europe, it also targeted crypto-Muslims and later Hindus. The Catholic Church destroyed a significant number of the inquisitorial records. The number of victims in the Goan Inquisition is estimated to be roughly one-third of the total figure, based on the records which remain. The presence of Crypto-Judaism in India continues to be an ongoing field of academic research. Pakistan. The region of Pakistan, Afghanistan, according to the theory of Pashtun descent from the Israelites, is where the 10 lost tribes of the Kingdom of Northern Israel were banished. Under British rule, Pakistan did have Jewish residents who openly identified as Jews. They were primarily from India's Bene Israel community, but there were also Jews from Central Asia, Iran, Iraq, and Afghanistan. After Pakistan gained independence in 1947 and the subsequent creation of Israel, most of Pakistan's Jews, fearing a violent backlash, fled to Israel, India, the United States, the United Kingdom and elsewhere. Most of those who remained became crypto-Jews and hid within other more acceptable minority groups such as the Parsis and Christians. According to the 2013 electoral list, there were 809 people who identified as Jews and were eligible to vote in Pakistan. If those who are crypto-Jews are included, the population size would probably be around 2,000 individuals.